Hello, this is Mitch Miller, making a video real quick. Again, I am a psychotherapist and a practicing Roman Catholic. I like to make videos on issues related to psychotherapy and Christianity, religion, theology, all of the above. So I'm going to make, this is going to be kind of a practical video. I want to talk about different kinds of treatment out there in the world. At least the ones that I know something about. I'm sure there's several that I don't know anything about, and how they work and what the basic concepts are. So that you understand, what it is you're getting into, especially if you're a family member, if you have a family member or a loved one who you think might need some form of treatment. So first off, I'm going to talk about the big one, which is chemical dependency treatment, substance abuse treatment, addiction treatment. They're all the same pretty much. My goal here is to give you kind of like an insider's view. In the business, this is going to be kind of controversial, but in the business, by and large, chemical dependency treatment is viewed as basically like glorified babysitting. Now, so I need to qualify that. There's a very wide breadth of quality in the different chemical dependency treatment centers around the country. Some are good, some are bad, and some are in between. But when you think about what is a chemical dependency treatment actually accomplishing, what is the active ingredient, so to speak, it's hard to say. Because the treatment outcomes for chemical dependency treatment centers by and large are so mixed. If you go around, I encourage you to look, if you have a loved one you think might need chemical dependency treatment, I encourage you to look around at the different treatment centers. You can go to the SAMHSA website, samhsa.org, and look up their treatment locator, and they'll show you all of the licensed treatment facilities within any zip code that you type in, or any state that you type in for that matter. And I encourage you, you can go there and you can look at these different treatment centers, and there's thousands of them, and look at what are their outcomes. What do people get when they leave treatment? What are the chances that they're going to relapse after they leave treatment? When they go to treatment, do they leave treatment less likely to relapse than when they went into treatment? Very few of them, if any, will actually tell you that that is the case, that people leaving treatment successfully will be any better off than going into treatment. I think that's an important thing to think about. Not that treatment's bad. I want to be very clear that treatment is not bad. It's there, and it's a good thing for those who need it. However, those who need it are basically people who, I would say it's a last recourse. It's considered glorified babysitting in my mind because, by and large, the active ingredient in chemical dependency treatment is forced abstinence. A chemical dependency treatment center or program or whatever is good insofar as it's able to prevent people from continuing to use and continuing to relapse. And then in that period of enforced sobriety, people start to, maybe think about life differently. The problem is when they leave that environment of enforced sobriety, they go back to the world where no one's forcing them to stay sober, and they go back to the same problems that wait for them when they get out or when they go home. And then those same problems will lead them to relapse, lead them to drink. They don't know how to deal with frustration. They don't know how to turn down an offer for drugs. They don't know how to find other social activities to engage in other than drugs, because all of their friends use. Everything is around substance use. Very, very, very few treatment centers will do any kind of long-term care to prepare people. What do you do in the world besides use drugs, besides drink? How do you deal with life in a way that doesn't require you to continue using? Very, very few, if any, actually do that. That's because, frankly, most treatment centers are designed to their businesses. They're designed to make a lot of money, and they do make a lot of money. And the way that you make a lot of money in chemical dependency treatment is one of two ways. Either you find ways to squeeze every last dime out of payers, out of insurance companies, which means you're typically taking advantage of state insurance and whatnot, and that's sort of like the bottom end, like if you're going to a lower socioeconomic class. Or you go the opposite direction. You make yourself an exclusive resort and you charge out the nose. You charge tens of thousands of dollars for a week or for maybe even a day, and you make yourself kind of one of the Silicon Valley, celebrity status type places. And those are the two general ways that you make a lot of money in chemical dependency treatment. And so their business is just like anything else. So that leads me to the next thing, which is not something you want your family member to have to go to, but it's the other thing that I have expertise in, which is sex offender treatment. And I think in my mind that chemical dependency treatment has a lot to learn from sex offender treatment. And here's what's different. In sex offender treatment, you don't get discharged from treatment until you're able to demonstrate change, until you're able to prove that you live your life differently than when you were living your life, than the way you were living your life when you committed your offense. In chemical dependency treatment, that's not the case. You wouldn't make a lot of money if you forced people to stay into treatment and only discharged them, only graduated them. It would be really hard to tell who you would hold on to as clients, how long you would hold on to them. It would just be very difficult to actually make that system work. But I think it would be beneficial at the same time. I'm not going to pretend to know the answer to that, but in chemical dependency treatment, you're a client, you come in, you come for a week, you come for 4 weeks, you come for 90 days. It's all based on time because the mechanism is enforced sobriety. It's all based on time. You come in, you spend 90 days in outpatient treatment or whatever, and then if you were able to do that 90 days successfully without breaking the rules, and you graduate, you completed treatment successfully. In sex offender treatment, it don't work that way. You can be in treatment for many, many years. Where I was working, some people would be in treatment as long as 7 or 8 years because it depended on them showing that they lived their life differently. And once they showed that they knew how to deal with life on life's terms without engaging in harmful behaviors, they were graduated. And when we were writing reports saying that, this person has graduated, we had reasons why they graduated. It was like, they did this, they did that, they changed this, they changed that. These were the problems that they had in their life when they committed their sexual offense. And here is how they have made amends for those problems, and here's how they changed their life, and how they have demonstrated in a scientific way that they are lower risk. We have benchmarks that we use that are scientifically studied that correlate with lower levels of risk. So for instance, if someone has a lot of compulsivity that they don't know how to manage, or if someone has a big one is lack of social relationships, if someone's very socially isolated and doesn't have good social skills, doesn't know how to find sexual partners in appropriate ways, that person is at a considerably higher risk of sexually offending or sexually recidivating after they are released from prison or even after they're completing treatment. So what treatment will do is try to basically give them an opportunity to turn their lives around, develop social skills, develop social peer networks and things like that, so that they don't have that social deficit and they are now at a lower level of risk in an rigorously evidence-based way, at least as far as treatment goes. Chemical dependency treatment has nothing like that. There is no tests that chemical dependency treatment centers do to determine what your relapse risk is coming into and going out of treatment, and basing that on like longitudinal studies of 1, 5, or 10-year follow-ups. That's what they do with sex offenders. You have them on probation. They have follow-ups during probation and after probation at so many years, and to see if they've relapsed, recidivated, or whatever. And you look at their characteristics and you just compare. Okay, so you made it this far and you relapsed, and you made it this far and you recidivated. You didn't. What's the difference? There's nothing like that in the chemical dependency treatment world. So really, it's a lot of guesswork. So by and large, what they're doing in chemical dependency treatment is glorified babysitting. They kind of throw in a little bit of like cognitive behavioral therapy, or 12-step work here and there, maybe a little bit of like relapse prevention type stuff where they kind of talk about, what would it be nice if you did if you left here, like sitting here in the treatment center with enforced sobriety. Let's talk about what you'll do when you leave here. But then when they leave there and they actually encounter the world, a lot of that stuff just falls to the wayside. So an alternative way would be for chemical dependency treatment centers to start actually looking at people who relapse, and what are the characteristics of people who relapse versus people who don't relapse, and how can you, during your treatment, make your clientele look more like the clientele that don't relapse. That's what we do in sex offender treatment. I recommend that chemical dependency treatment centers do things the same way. Besides that, there's a couple other kinds of treatment I know a little bit about. That's domestic violence and anger management. And I'll put these two things in juxtaposition as well. They can look very similar. If I have a client who's engaging in certain kinds of behaviors, they might look outwardly very similar, whether it's aggression, violence with a partner or something like that, with their wife, with their spouse, or with their children. It might look the same, but the manifestation, the underlying issue might be totally different. And this is what distinguishes domestic violence from anger management. Domestic violence is about power and control. Someone who is a domestic violence client knows exactly what they're doing. It's on purpose. It's meant to control and manipulate their partner or whatever the situation is, because they have a very, fragile sense of self. They're very insecure, and they have to make sure that no one leaves them or violates their trust or whatever, and they're just always vigilant about it, a little bit paranoid almost, but they're in complete control of themselves. It's very calculated what they're doing. Whereas anger management is the opposite. They might be flying off the handle, and it's because they lose control. They haven't thought it through. They don't have the skills to think ahead and think, boy, here's the situation. Here's my automatic thought here. Here's what my automatic judgment tells me to do. It tells me to fly off the handle and scream because I don't feel safe. They don't have that. They just obey their passions, obey their emotions, and do whatever the anger tells them to do because they don't know what else to do. So in the anger management case, we work on building up those skills. How do you sort of sit with the anger and let it not control you, and sort of push back against that anger and say, yeah, I feel your anger. I feel you there. And I don't have to let you control me. Like, I still have my own choices. I still have my own free will, and I'm going to do what my mind tells me to do. I'm going to do what reason tells me to do, and not just follow my emotions all of the time. Because following your emotions, for as popular as it is nowadays, is not always the right thing to do. Whether it's love or anger or whatever it is, following your emotions is not always the most popular thing. Almost the right thing you have to do. You have to examine your emotions with reason, and then come to the decision about what is the correct emotion to have in any given situation. Emotions have to be judged by the intellect, by the reason. Now, domestic violence, what you do is you don't do anger management won't work with domestic violence, because these people are calculated, they are smart, they are strategic. What you have to do is you have to look at their deep-seated beliefs about why they feel they have to be in control all of the time, right? Because it's not a matter of lack of control, it's a matter of too much control. And how do you get someone who has complete control to stop controlling things? It's not an easy sell. Like, people like having power, they like being in control, unless they continually get more and more bad consequences that keep getting them in trouble and stuff like that. So you have to look at their values. So domestic violence is all about changing values, all about changing why you think it's so important for your partner to be subservient to you, or your children to be subservient to you. why you think it's important that they do everything that you say, and that they can't have other friends or other relationships outside of your relationships, and that you have to be in control. Because if I'm not in control, let's just say the classic example of the abusive husband or something, if I'm not in control as the man, then that means I'm not doing my job somehow. That's a message I learned somewhere. That's some rule that I picked up somewhere. And so in domestic violence treatment, you look at the reasons for that rule and show the consequences of that rule, and how the consequences of that rule are negative, not just to the people that you care about, but to yourself as well. So it's really kind of like almost like a debate, almost like an argument. But don't want to necessarily say that everybody who's domestic violence is evil, because I don't think that's the case. I think there's a lot of reasons why someone might have those types of beliefs about the world, whether it's histories of abuse or on lack of safety in their life, and they felt like the only way that they could have safe relationships is to be in control. And so then it's a kind of a period of relearning the way life can be. In order to feel safe in a relationship, there are other ways to feel safe in a relationship besides always being in complete control. In fact, there's a lot of better ways of being in a relationship with someone. And sometimes your relationships might be even better than when you're in complete control all the time. I mean, imagine if you had complete control of your spouse and had complete control over what they love and what they don't love. How do you know their love is genuine for you if you have complete control over it? So you start to explore themes like that. Domestic violence therapy and anger management are both pretty time limited. The longest by far is sex offender treatment. This is why I have the most respect for sex offender treatment, because it's the most rigorous by far. Because people get weird about sexual issues. You hear, oh yeah, there's a sex offender who lives down the block. Everybody's like, and they freak out. But if you just hear that, oh, there's a wife beater who lives down the block, or there's an addict who lives down the block, or there's a guy who has an anger problem who lives down the block, people don't react the same way as if you say there's a sex offender who lives down the block. So people are willing to put a lot more investment and laws regulating sex offender treatment because they want to make sure it works. I wish that they put the same sort of energy into other forms of treatment and learned what they've learned from sex offender treatment. Anyways, so that's a quick video. I hope it was helpful to someone out there. If there's anything you guys would like me to expand on, or any questions, comments, or scathing rebuttals, please leave me a question or comment below. Thanks for watching. Bye.